We got Jacksonville at Tampa Bay. It feels like Trevor Lawrence isn't going to play. Does that change things on how you're attacking this one?
Yeah, if Trevor Lawrence was playing, this would have been the game of the week that I would have been heavily attacking in DFS. I think, as you can see on screen, both teams are top 10 in fantasy points allowed to both the quarterback, wide receiver, and tight end position. Both teams are better against the run than the pass. And if Trevor Lawrence was out there, you could have talked yourself into this one having real fantasy value. I think that without Lawrence, it's definitely a big knock on the Jags. We saw, Calvin Ridley is out there and getting the volume. He's had 25 targets in the last 2 games. But Robert Mays of The Athletic and Josh Norris of Underdog, they've both talked about this. Calvin Ridley isn't getting plays designed easily for him. He's running these kind of high difficulty routes where he's got to catch the ball on the boundary or, deep downfield. Whereas the Jags could really help him out by just bringing some in-breakers into the middle of the field and letting him actually, catch the ball and fall down. I can't remember where I heard. Maybe it was Establish a Run this week talked about how when Calvin Ridley was in Atlanta, he made a living out of catching the ball and falling down with Matt Ryan. Well, let's let him catch the ball and fall down for the Jags. So in another situation, I'd be really excited about Calvin Ridley. With CJ Beathard, I don't think I can be. Evan Ingram is coming off the worst performance of the year for him. But Tampa Bay, since week 11, they've allowed 3 tight ends over 14 points. So I think you can count on him for a bounce back here, even with CJ Beathard. Travis Etienne tweeted this out earlier. Pre-bye week, he was averaging 20.5 PPR points per game. Since then, he's averaging 12.2. It just feels like in the last 2 years, we've seen Travis Etienne fade down the stretch. We saw it last year when after they traded James Robinson, it just didn't seem to, the same burst just didn't seem to be there for Etienne. Maybe I'm wrong, but yeah, I'm not excited about playing him. Chris Godwin, since his wife got on Instagram and launched a bit of a rant against the Bucs, he's had 23 targets in the last 2 games, and it was his first 100-plus yard game of the year. He's, he definitely feels like a more reliable start at this point in the year. I'd start Mike White. I think this isn't a great matchup for Rashad White, but start Mike Evans, but it's not a great matchup for Rashad White. But he's shown that he can get there in games which don't look like good matchups this year, whether it's through the PPR volume of catching passes or whether it's through rushing the ball better than we expected. And then Baker Mayfield, just got to spend a quick minute to just talk about the fact that Baker Mayfield might be being the best value quarterback in fantasy drafts this year. He's scored 16 or more points in 9 games, 18 or more in 7 games. And then now we're talking about the Jags, who've allowed, since week 10, 5 of the 6 quarterbacks they've faced score 18 or more points. The only quarterback below that number was Will Levis, who has been a very up and down player. So, yeah, I think you can start Baker Mayfield. I think that there's some sneaky upside in DFS, and I won't be completely ignoring this game.
No, I love Baker. I think there's some really interesting stacking options this week. On the Etienne point, we talked about it a couple of times now, but part of the reason why he's slowed down from a fantasy perspective is the Jags aren't giving him the whole backfield. Before the bye, he was above 80-90% opportunity share week in, week out. Since the bye, he hasn't cleared 85%. Last week was his first week above 75% since the bye. It feels like they've sort of tried to rest him for the playoffs, and then all of a sudden they've got to this point where the Texans and the Colts are now catching up the Jags, and it's like, we don't really necessarily have that easy walk into the playoffs. So I do wonder if we're going to start seeing Etienne get more work, get more usage, and get back to that true 3-down bell cow back that he was, weeks 5, 6, 7, 8. And maybe that's where he can start to pay back those people that did draft him in August and September.